November, we do a lot of industry and specifically modeling and networking. Where never I'm gonna let it bring the voice. Thank you for coming.
What we're going to do is, because a lot of activity has changed in the last 2 years, and as it pertains to e-closings, there's been a lot of attention around to do things locally, and it could be, it hasn't been a tremendous amount of a few reasons for it. Today, to accomplish those, I think really just these type things do real organizations because it's been out of books for a long time. But first, while the panelists introduce themselves, my name is Tim Cooper. We're a consulting firm in Israel. We have a digital mortgage advisory team, child managers, so we're with lenders, we're getting that and ready for programming with technology companies like Roads, transportation, new to the digital mortgage market. Pointed out on this page, maybe a 10 to 11 years ago, I understand your mortgage program, I'm tired of doing this. Introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Allison Cole. I'm with the Union Bank in Lincoln, Nebraska. I think Danielle is trying to adjust our audio for those of us on Zoom, but I'm so happy to be able to join you from Nebraska.
Oh. Hold on, Allison. Sorry. Let's see. Are you muted? No.
Oh, wait around.
Sorry, we can stick it.
Being in-person notarization really got a lot of putting into this space because prior to this, I was the chief of orders familiar with, and during that time had spent a lot of it focused on getting lenders and others set up for e-notes, kind of the back end of e-notes. So if you think about all the investors and warehouse lenders and custodians, et cetera, for e-notes and e-closings. And then we started Escrow Tab really just to focus on, all right, now how can we actually get all this stuff to reach those people? And we had a strong belief at the time that business was still going to be done in person, and that closings would still be done in person because of the business that's happening at that closing table. So we were, that's what we stood up Escrow Tab around. Obviously, when COVID first hit, it was a little bit of a gut check to make sure, okay, do we believe that everything we put together is still going to be the right path, or we were putting together? And since then have been
The market's clearly been shifting, and in person is still what has remained in place during that time. Nicole or Danielle, did they?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Allison, can you try again?
Yeah, good morning.
Yay. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Go ahead, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me all the way from Nebraska today on Zoom. I'm Allison Cole, and I work for Union Bank and Trust. We're based out of Lincoln, Nebraska, and I'm really excited to share our e-closing and specifically our IPEN journey with you today.
Thank you, Allison. So what we thought we'd start off with was just kind of like an overview of IPEN. And what it is really is as simple of a form of electronic notarization as you can get. The borrowers and the signing agents or title agents are still meeting together in person for a closing, just like they would today. In some cases, banks who might manage their closings from their branch offices and have notaries come into their branch office to close those loans would still be doing that the same way, except everything will be signed electronically in one of 2 different ways. With escrow tab, we really focus on having the borrower's handwritten signature on the documents at the same time. Most of the other IPEN solution is really a click to sign solution. So if you think about just stamping the signature throughout the document. It's obviously become a lot more relevant in today's market as we're all looking to continue that in-person interaction with the counterparties that we work with. One of the data points here is that Solidify, which is a nationwide title insurance company, had done surveys the last several years, and consistently still borrowers say, more than 81% of the borrowers say they still want to be in person for that closing. Getting the input from the people that they're working with during the closing, and more importantly, making sure that they have everything locked down exactly the way it needs to be, so the closing is a success. They get their keys and they're able to move into their homes after spending this much time getting there, getting to that point. Doing it remotely is not what they tend to say they really want to do. One thing that we see is there's been a discussion about e-closings and electronic signatures for a long time. There's been a lot of companies who have popped up trying to create solutions, and many of those solutions have really been dependent on the lenders figuring it out on their own, buying all the technology, and then trying to find a way to push it out to the title agencies and from there out to the notary field. And what has really been important was to make sure that everyone that's involved in the closing is in a position where they get their own efficiency and benefit, right? It shouldn't be one person in that chain having to take on the heavier load from other people that are involved, or having to deal with the headache of some new systems. So making sure that there's something available where everyone in that chain is able to get the efficiency that they want and feel like they're getting value out of it is really important. And then there's the last piece that I'll talk about real quickly is how escrow tab applies IPEN. The way that one of the core beliefs that we had was that everyone involved from the investor and ownership side of those loans would still prefer to have the borrower's forensically verifiable handwritten signature on the documents. So we designed escrow tab so that the borrowers are still signing those documents. The notary is still signing that document and placing their stamp on the document, but they're signing on a tablet device so that we're still capturing that forensically verifiable signature. And what I mean by that is, so when you do go to court, because there's a foreclosure or some litigation on the loan, with a traditional electronic signing where it's a stamped signature, you go to court with an audit trail, and you use that audit trail to prove up the validation of that electronic signature. What we built was something where you go in front of the judge with both the audit trail and the documents that a forensic analyst can review and confirm that in fact it was that individual who signed those documents. So it's what we kind of refer to as our belts and suspenders approach to these closings and to electronic signatures. So with that, I want to give Allison the opportunity to talk from the lender's perspective. She's been working on e-closings for a long time. They've implemented a lot of different technology at their bank. Part of the reason why we wanted Allison to talk is because she's not a competitor in this market. And part of the reason why she's willing to talk to all of you is because she's not a competitor in this market. But with that, I'll hand it off to Allison.
Thank you so much, Brendan. So I just wanted to start out by saying I'm definitely one of you guys, right? We are a local lender. We are our community bank. And so I wanted to just sort of level set how our journey went with just a little bit of background about me and about Union Bank and sort of the kind of shop that we run, just so you understand that you don't have to be a huge conglomerate with all of these resources at your disposal. Like, this is something that everyday people can really accomplish and have a lot of success with. So we are an escrow tab client, and we just love them. I can't say enough good things about our partnership with them. They feel like one of our teammates. So I'm very happy to also candidly answer any questions that you guys have. So I currently serve as our operations manager, but I have just really grown up mortgage. I'm a millennial. I'm pretty passionate about crafting the kind of experience that I want to see out of a mortgage loan transaction. And I have the privilege of doing that in my role here at UBT. So I've had every operations job, from scanning stacks and stacks of paper files after school in high school, all the way through to actually mortgage origination. And I've been in this role for about 7 years, and we've taken our mortgage process from 100% paper to 100% electronic during that time frame. So when things like e-closing and new technology feel overwhelming, those feelings are normal, those are real, and you just have to remember that it is a long journey, and you're going to be so happy when you have the opportunity to look back and see what you've been able to accomplish. So a little bit more about UBT. So we're based in Lincoln, Nebraska. Our primary lending footprint is in Nebraska and Kansas. We have a little over 30 branches, and we are your hometown savings and loan bank. We have 11 loan officers. We're not huge, as I mentioned. We typically have an operations staff of around 20, and we do everything. So origination through shipping and then servicing. So our underwriting is also in-house too. And primarily our business is conventional loans held for sale that we retain the servicing on. So a big part of Union Bank is we like to say your money has people instead of people have your money. And that's really where we feel like Escrow Tab is a great fit, and their technology solution is a good fit for how we do mortgage loans here. Something important for you to understand about us is we are still at our closings. So if you are doing a refinance, you're meeting with your loan officer in person, the same person that took your application, that helped you lock your rate, that walked you through your appraisal. So that is definitely your person for your mortgage, all the way up through final closing and signing. In the purchase heavy market that we're in right now, typically our settlement agent or our title partner and our loan officer attend that closing together. And for us, we really like that sort of warm personal touch that gives the last interaction with the client. Like, that's the happiest time, and probably something that I miss the most being an originator is seeing a first-time home buyer get their keys at the table. So exciting. And we like to be part of that experience. And that's really why IPEN has had so much success here at UVT. So a little bit more about our e-closing journey. I'm going to tell you what we did and then give you some advice for what I would do if I would do this over again. So it's been on our roadmap for a few years, to be quite honest. Pre-pandemic, it was on our roadmap, and we just sort of pushed it off. Like, do we need this? Will our customers actually use it? Are they going to ask us for it? It seems like a lot of work. Is there other things that we might be able to tackle instead that would give us a different lift? And then pandemic hit, and we were doing nothing but figuring out how to get loans out the door, including the closing. So we were doing loans through our drive-through lanes, closings through our drive-through. We were signing on the top of people's cars in our masks, and it was just chaos. And then once the crazy signing experience was done, then we had all of this paper. We actually had to convert one of our lunchroom areas into my new post-closing room just because we had stacks and stacks of paper. Something that was also a real challenge for us during the pandemic was our notes document custodian. They kept getting COVID in their offices, and so it was taking weeks and weeks for them to certify our notes at delivery. We kept having to extend our locks. That was very expensive for us. And really, we just got sorry from Fannie Mae, and you can try and recoup the costs from them, but you deal with that on your own. So in taking that experience, we realized, like, there's so much more benefit to an e-closing than just what the customer sees. And that's really from an operations perspective, what I also want you to leave here with today about the benefits of IPEN. So in the spirit of full transparency, we probably worked on our e-closing project for at least 14 plus months, but I'll give you a caveat for that. I know I see you giggling, like, holy cow, that's a lot. But we did everything all at once. So we did RON, we vaulted all of our business lines, including some of our equipment finance business lines, our non-real estate business lines. We onboarded 2 states at once, and so we did RON and IPEN. And we actually started with RON. We thought this was a good idea because RON was, we decided to use the vendor that we use for our point of sale. So, that's a TPRM when they're already onboarded. And while we worked with Escrow Tab to go through that process, we thought, well, we can get RON going. And it was pretty complicated. We did hire a consultant in the beginning to help educate us. I would absolutely recommend that. I wish that we would have done IPEN first, which I'll talk about a little bit more, but so we did onboard RON first. We closed our first 100% electronic RON file in April of this year. So e-note and everything. She actually closed from her work, which was a daycare, and we had a big celebration. It was really fun. But then we're like, all right, now what do we do? How do we actually use this in our everyday? And we quickly realized that RON just didn't quite fit yet for us. We've closed probably 24 files through this methodology since we've started. But with us switching to a purchase-centric market, and just with our brand value, with having that in person, your money has people, attitude towards our customers, it made sense for us to really push and ramp up IPEN. So that's what we've done. Escrow Tab was fantastic to work with. I will say you don't need to go the vault route. So we don't use Escrow Tab's vault, but we absolutely could have. And having to do this over again, I would recommend, especially in this market right now, start with IPEN. Start with Escrow Tab's vault. It makes things so much easier. And something that I think is easy to forget is as these vaults evolve, they all talk to each other. So if you change your mind later and you go down a different path or you onboard wrong, and you want to make sure all of your notes are in the same vault, you can always move them later. So removing some of those barriers for I need to figure out the next 25 steps before I start something like IPEN is definitely what I would recommend. You do have a little bit of work to do in making sure that you understand your state's notary requirements. And I know Brendan and his team are have been really helpful for us. A lot of that we did work through on our own, but again, use your resources that you have available with your vendors, like Escrow Tab, just to get started. So from an operations standpoint, what we're already seeing, so we went like live, floodgates open right after Labor Day this year, so in early September. We've closed over 100 notes electronically with Escrow Tab, and we're just doing everything that every piece of paper that can be electronic is electronic in our current environment. So we are seeing some fully electronic closings, and we have a few investors that just aren't ready to accept a piece of collateral or a particular or a particular notary. So and that's okay. We just pull those papers out and still wet sign those. But what we're seeing with those documents coming back instantly from the officer's tablets, our post-closing process is so much faster now. We're not rescanning documents that got stuck together or were upside down. And those seem like such minute things until you really have an opportunity to experience the volume of having everything just come in clean and tidy. I love my loan officers, and I feel like I get a little bit of leeway since I did that job for a few years, but sometimes we get a little bit carried away with having fun conversation and we're less focused on making sure we check the attestation box on our 4506C, or that we date every single piece of paper, or that we stamp our notary stamp everywhere that it should be, and chasing down post-closing signatures that's like the hazing job that you get for a mortgage, right? That's the new person's job is go find all of the missing signatures, and you don't have to worry about that with the IPEN closings. As you sign through each page, it will tell you, yep, you've got all the signatures completed, or you have 3 signature points and a stamp. And you know when you press send that those documents are perfect. And we've really enjoyed that. Initials on the 1003, I'm sure that's everyone's favorite thing to track down post-closing. I want to talk to you just really quickly about working with our title partners and how that's worked for us. So the flexibility with using IPEN, and specifically with using IPEN with Escrow Tab as our partner, is that we do have tons of flexibility. So this is new in our market, and we're one of the first banks that's closing anything with IPEN. So when we get a new file, we're picking up the phone, calling our title partner and saying, hey, we're going to execute everything electronically. How would you want us to deliver that deed of trust? And we're just rebuilding those relationships. And honestly, that's been really nice for us as a lender to get an opportunity to talk to our title partners again, and just reconnect and say, I'll have a digital deed of trust for you to file. How best can I get that to you right after the closing when that's done? So we found that process to be really easy. We've been e-filing here in Nebraska for a long time, so rather than having a title person run through 5 or 6 closings through town at lots of different banks and have a stack of documents that they need to take back and file, their back office staff is able to just get an email, a secure email from us, and electronically file. So by the time that settlement agent even gets back to the office from a busy Friday of closings, their things are already filed. And I think that reinforces what Brendan was talking about with there's lifts for everyone involved in the process as well. I really do want to be pretty authentic in that we really enjoyed our partnership with Escrow Tab. So, and they really listened to our suggestions. We said, hey, well, let's try this, or we think we might like something like that, or what about if we could swipe the documents instead of push a button to go to the next document. They're really a vendor that we feel like we can grow with, and they're not even our local vendor, and I would say I would count them as one of my favorite vendors that we work with for sure. I'm sure that you guys have a lot of questions about IPEN, and I know as we go through the rest of the speakers, I'm happy to answer some specific questions. But again, I think IPEN is a great place to start your e-closing journey. Escrow Tab has taken a lot of that complexity out for you. You don't have to have an additional vault vendor contract or worry about setting all of that up. They helped us with our MERS testing, which was huge. It really was pretty easy, honestly. So if you're looking for a place to start, this is definitely where I would recommend after our journey at UBT.
Is kind of insights from someone who is has used Escrow Tab and is on the title side. So we found the best regional basketball player that we could possibly find.
And Todd, actually, very at the beginning, had an issue with Mike, so if you could introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah.
So again, that would be great for the people.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Todd Ewing, and I'm founder of Federal Title and Escrow Company. Just DC, Maryland, and Virginia for the moment. Maybe Escrow Tab is going to let us expand on that, I don't know. But yeah, I appreciate it. I guess Brennan had accused me of being long-winded, so I'll try to keep it and he's right. I can be. I get off topic sometimes. I get excited about stuff like this, but he even gave me prompts here. Why he went the IPEN route? Well, I went the IPEN route. My first thought of that is I hate copiers, I hate printers, and I really don't like paper cuts. Right. So for 30 years almost now, we've been walking into a settlement, conference table with 70 pages of paper, right? And so when Brendan we first met, we were introduced and explained the product. I got excited. I was like, "Wow, it's really something that we want to explore a little more." And we've been using RON. For since COVID, really, but for the seller side, and sellers are we give them the option. You want to come in the office? Do you want to how do you want to handle it? And surprisingly, it's 95% problem. Sellers say, no, we just want to do our own. and so we do ARP, and it works well. But when it comes to buyers, we discovered that there's a whole different psychology in it. There's still that, and not just from the buyers, but the real estate agents themselves, and kind of encourage or push their buyers to come to close. You know, there's still that ceremonial component to the act, and agents sometimes want to take advantage of that for marketing purposes, whatever the case may be. So, and this is where EscrowTab really, you know, it's shined for us, and it's been a real boon. Is the ability to sit there at a closing in person, have them sign the documents on a tablet. You get comments, you know, well, I mean, prior to this, you know, you all have heard people say for the last 10 years, people will say, good, you know, watching all the papers, and go, good Lord, you still have to do it like this? Like, yeah, this is the title industry, this is the mortgage industry, randomly. This is the way we do things. But now, you know, you walk in with the tablet, and you know the reactions are just so positive. It's so good. They say, wow, this is really cool. This is great. Agents love it. The buyers love it. They get excited about it. But the efficiencies that are built into this, and I'll just kind of echo, I think what Allison said, are just beyond belief. I mean, we now can, and again, you know, we still have a lot of agents, buyers who say, well, I don't want to come to your office. Can you come to my office? Can you come to my workplace or whatever? It's easy now. It's easy. You know, you send out one of your settlement attorneys to the workplace, or you send them to their home office, and they can easily conduct a transaction. If there's a document missing, they discover there's a mistake on a document. Well, guess what? You know, just replace it, and like that. You know, as opposed to, oh boy, you know, all that, and wait half the day to get a replacement document back, or email back and find the printer printed on and the whole bit. It's so easy. And then the efficiencies of just being able to sit there after you finish your closing wherever you are, and just email those signed documents to whatever party you need to send them to. You want to send a signed settlement statement to the real estate agents while you're sitting there closing. That's pretty cool. You know, they'll, oh yeah, I got it right here. Thanks. Great. Everything, I got everything I need. And you know, the ability to organize the documents how you want. You know, so you do this. You can sort and package the seller signed documents separate from the buyer signed documents. It's real simple. And again, just securely email us right from the point of finishing closing. Send your documents to the post-closing department. Like Allison was saying, I mean, our post-closing loves it. Absolutely loves it. It's just boom, it's there. And then if the settlement attorney, you know, is away from one of our 5 offices doing the closing at somebody's home, they're here in Full, you know, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they don't have to race back to the office with the documents. They don't have to find a FedEx drop and FedEx documents anywhere. They're done. They can go home. So some of the efficiencies, I mean, again, savings, we, you know, you realize from paper, savings you realize from copy leases and scanners and all that jazz is just it's just refreshing. You know, it's nice to free yourself from all that. You know, we're just hoping that more and more lenders will adapt and adopt, you know, particularly, you know, the note with the eVault, you know, and I think we're seeing that, and hopefully, you know, within a year or two, we're gonna really be humming with this technology. It is wonderful technology, and I also have echoed Allison said about the ease at which EscrowTab makes the onboard. You know, we have 12 notaries or whatever it is, you know, and that was one of our concerns. We gotta get everybody, you know, qualified as a fee notary and so forth. Easy, you know, they assist you along the way doing all that. You know, when we had recommendations for changes to make things even more efficient for us, as Allison pointed out, we had the same experience. You know, we said, well, can you do it this way or that way? Or the way? Oh, they listen and then work with us to implement those changes. So it's been a real pleasure. We gained tremendous benefits from it. I still think, you know, that survey is correct, that the buyers still want to come in to do their, I mean, not all, but I mean, I think there's still going to be a large percentage of home buyers who still want that. Whether it's the agent pushing them or not, I don't know. but I think they still want to come in, shake hands, you know, and do their closing and have that experience. So and then feel like they've actually done something. So that's really been our experience.
So Tim, obviously Allison and Todd both use Escrotech. But you know, IPEN in general, I mean, you've been working with and for kind of big lenders and who are seeking adoption paths for e-closings. Introduce yourself again for everyone, but can you talk a little more about that as kind of just like an independent consultant in the industry? And
yeah, my name is Tim Cooper. I work with Falcon Capital Advisors. We're based in Virginia. As Brendan mentioned, we work with lenders. We also work with Ginnie Mae and supporting their equilateral program. You know, some things with the pandemic, a lot of what was pushed and the industry focused on was RON, which is a good tool. And we don't want to, you know, it's not something that's going to go away. It's something that is valuable. But, you know, when we're talking with lenders, both big and small, because of that, they're thinking that they have two options, either just a hybrid, which is, you know, a lot of your documents are electronic and then you still have some paper, or RON, kind of IPEN's kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit lately. So when we go in as a consultant, we try to bring in IPEN into their, you know, with them, educate them, give them some knowledge on IPEN, because I think, you know, our opinion is IPEN is part of the full package of a digital strategy. And you should be able to offer, if you want to fully scale digital closings, IPEN should be part of, I call it your toolkit going forward. Because if, you know, I was actually going to quote that same survey that Brendan did, 81% of people still want to meet face-to-face. Just because you can meet face-to-face, why not make it electronic? Allison and Todd have both echoed all the efficiencies that you're gaining. I think in addition, you might be able to talk to this too, even though many counties and many states have offered e-recording for a while. When you're e-recording a printed document, some of them have, you know, margin, font sizes, and when people are printing those out, or paper sizes, you run up against like all those things that you can still have errors with. But if you're going fully electronic, you can control all that. So the speed and ease of recordings, you know, sometimes people don't think about that when they're looking at.
Yeah, I should have commented. That's right, exactly. And then just the quality control at the end of the day, you know, with the application of notary seals and making sure every document's been signed and so forth. It's outstanding.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, part of our strategy when we're talking to lenders is to educate them on IPEN, in addition to, you know, the process of helping them go through their investor approvals and their process and procedures for using e-notes. And we are vendor agnostic, but, you know, escrow tab, we've worked with them. They are, you know, a good company out there. When we're working with lenders, we kind of give them the whole picture, so they can make that, we don't make that decision for them. But like I said, IPEN is definitely something that we like to educate and, you know, let lenders know that it needs to be part of their digital strategy to have full digital adoption.
And so, as you were going through some of that with US Bank, what were kind of some of the feedback that you got from your retail branches or LOs that you felt like was important to have a successful closing or e-closing?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, you know, when we, as Allison mentioned as well, at US Bank, who I worked for prior to joining Falcon, is e-closings was actually on our roadmap. I was actually starting that project when the pandemic hit. We were getting ready to start it. I was on vacation and get a phone call. We need to stand this up in weeks, not months, because you know, people just can't meet in person anymore. So I mean, that was the being able to do a full electronic closing was I think the mindset at the time when we started. But as we went and as we started doing closing, you know, the operations folks and the origination channels started to realize some of the other benefits besides just the not being in person piece. You know, one of the big benefits, whether you're doing a hybrid closing, an IPEN closing, or a RON closing, is when you're meeting with a notary or settlement agent, depending on the workflow, you don't have somebody staring at you on the other side of the table while you sign out on pieces of paper. Like even people that didn't know at first that they wanted to do it at e-closing, it just was like, they're like, sure, let's do it. You interview them before, and then you interview them afterwards. You're like, that was great. If they've done closings before, I didn't. I was able to look at my documents ahead of the time on my computer, ask any questions. When I met with them, I just signed the documents, and they turned it into like a 10-minute closing versus an hour long with this awkward stare while you're signing documents. You don't want to read too much because people are staring at you, they're taking too much time. So those were some benefits, and you know, the customers echoed that with their you know, their operations, their origination partners that they've been working with. And then the error reduction, our post-closing department, once they, you know, immediately started seeing error reduction, they didn't, you know, the little man on the totem pole didn't have to chase down, as Allison referred to, chase down the signatures. We didn't have any errors in signatures. 4506 was a huge one that we had error reductions in. And then note correction is also a huge one when you go to using an e-note. Because if you do need to get, instead of getting an affidavit to correct a note that you have to send an overdraft for, you can just get an e-note signed. You can call the borrower, send it to them while you're on the phone, and have it back, have it registered with their MERS and replaced in your e-vault within minutes versus days or hours that it takes you to have somebody go out and do a corrective affidavit or a corrective note signed. So those are all big things that we saw.
No, thank you. So we want to save the rest of the time, I think, just for questions, and just be very open and casual. Anything that you have on your mind or challenges that you faced and want to try to overcome that any of us can help you think through. That's what this time is for. And I'll say, let's offer to everyone in the room for a minute first, and then we'll open it up to anybody that's dialed in.
Question. So does the title agency and the lender both have to have the IPEN capability and maybe the API to bring that information to their loan origination system? How does that?
It's a good question. So the way that we have approached it is, my goal was always, having seen how challenging it can sometimes be for lenders to have to adopt tech and push it out. Our goal was always to
tell lenders they don't need anything additional. So like with working with Todd, right? He has all the technology. All the lender really needs to do is highlight in their closing instructions that it is IPEN eligible. And then if the lender also wants an E-note, when Todd is loading up the documents into our system, he designates it for an E-note, and we create that Mismo Smart Doc E-note. It gets signed, and then we'll figure out with the lender what path they want to do for that note. So like what Allison mentioned is she has her own e-vault today. We register the note with MERS because that's the path that they choose, and then it gets transferred into their existing e-vault. If someone were using ours and they, for some reason, like a lot of credit unions don't register loans with MERS, so they might just store it in our eVault. Otherwise, what would more likely happen is we will auto register it with MERS, and then it just sits in our eVault until you transfer it to your counterparty. So depending on the structure of your organization, if you're an independent mortgage bank, you probably have a warehouse lender that you're transferring it to. If you're a bank, you might just be holding it until you decide to maybe sell it to someone else. So it was really about, don't require the lender to have to adopt technology, and don't need to have API connections into there, because the documents will get transferred back to you using whatever portal you want that transfer to, that you're already taking it from the title company. And if you're only taking it in paper today, then it's just a matter of setting up, where do you want them delivered.
You do, just the caveat of what Brendan said, sorry. With them creating the E-note, as a lender, you would, though, if you're selling it to a counterparty, you would have to be approved to sell them E-notes. So if escrow tab did generate that E-note, and you did go that route, the lender would have to be approved to sell E-notes for that loan to the counterparties or the investors. So you would still have to go through that approval process if you're going to do the full E-note process. But just one thing I wanted to add on top of when you were asking about the lender versus the title company, like I said, there is definitely value in RON, and to be able to offer that to your customer, because sometimes you just can't meet in person or don't want to. But one of the advantages, at least from the lender perspective, if the title company wants to use IPEN, when you look at it from your investor perspective, they don't have all the requirements that you have to ensure that you do with RON. With RON, you have to make sure that you store, or have access to that video file for 10 years or state law, whichever is greater. You have to pass certain investor codes to them indicated with RON. With IPEN, you don't have to do that. So if you're, even if you still want a paper note, which is a workflow, but the rest electronic, you don't have the technology, you can use like an escrow tab and have your settlement agent do all the rest of the pieces electronically, and your investors will pretty much view it as your same paper transaction, but you're gaining a lot of the efficiencies of not having a paper.
I would agree.
Question for Todd, what is the percentage of files in your company that you see lenders actually allow you to use as technology? Like, is it majority of the files?
There's very, very few lenders right now
Okay.
are permitting well, they allow us to use this technology. Excuse me.
The IPEN, yeah.
Yeah, allows us to use it, but as far as when it comes to the note, most lenders still requiring us right at the moment to have the note signed on paper.
But outside of the note, you haven't really run into issues.
Deed of trust,
Yeah.
So we use this exclusively for cash. I mean, we do a lot of cash transactions, as everybody knows right now. So we use it, exclusively almost for cash transactions. But yeah, and we use it for lender transactions too. But again, still, there's very few lenders that allow that are permitting us to do e-vote yet, but it's coming. It's
But they're allowing the IPEN on the rest of their documents, just not the note and the deed of trust.
Correct, yeah, yeah, and so, you know, most lenders would just allow, you know, allow us in their instructions, we could just simply then take all those documents and just upload them to their, you know, to their portal, whether it's a quality or whatever it is, and.
And one thing with the deed of trust, and one thing we try to help with lenders as well, with IPEN is, I know it's new to them and they want to control it, but, and we try to work, you know, as part of our engagements with lenders, you know, that's engaging with your title partners. And if they were to be using IPEN, and they're comfortable that they can close and ensure that transaction and record that security instrument. If they use IPEN, from a lender perspective, there shouldn't be, you shouldn't have an issue with this. I just,
Right.
yeah, that's a hurdle that we try to help as consultants help internal, you know, lender representative risk and compliance people understand.
About the deed of trust.
Yeah,
But yeah. So we can kind of go back and forth several lenders.
Right.
There are several. I don't know what the percentage would be. I maybe half.
Yeah.
Half lenders just say, "Oh, that's fine. You don't need to have. We don't need to have the wet ink. You know, what they, well, you know, what the deed of trust wet ink. You know, because we're even recording immediately after we. You know, that's not. So, but right now, just to play it safe, we're just having wet ink the deed of trust as well. So no, because that's not an argument for us to make. That's very
Yeah. And frankly, that's what we end up doing quite a bit, is it's about more education with the lending community, primarily around understanding that lenders have been conditioned to believe that they have to manage in e-closing, right? And it's been like that for a long time. We did not want to have lenders take on the burden of implementing the e-closing all the time. Certainly everyone operates a little bit differently, but we didn't want them to be forced to have to do that. So a lot of times they just need to figure out, okay, if I'm going to implement this for, let's say, everything other than the note, then do I have any issues on the investor side? Well, if you're selling to any of the GSEs or on like any loan that's going to Ginny, there's no problem with that. If you have private investors, you need to have a conversation with them. The lender needs to have a conversation with them just to say, hey, are you good with this? On the e-note, obviously there's other people in the chain who have to have technology, right? And it's really about access to that technology, which is just the evolve. And depending on the investor, you might run into more issues or not. But again, GSEs, Ginnie Mae, so all your FHA and VA loans, those are all, you know, full e-close eligible. And with a FHA loan and VA loan, even if you don't have an e-note, you can still IPEN sign those documents electronically. So everything other than the note done electronically. But I want to give an opportunity to other people to ask questions, or if Allison needs.
Yeah, I think Allison wanted to answer.
Oh, okay, great.
Feedback.
Oh, you know, I was just going to chime in and say that we're seeing the same.
Hold on 1 second, Allison, before you start.
Sure.
I'm gonna switch
Sure.
the speakers real quick. Okay, you should be good.
All right.
1 second. 1 second. All right, let's try this again.
Okay. How about now?
You're good, thank you, sorry.
I was just going to say, like, as a lender, it's something that's really easy for us to adopt into our current process. So as soon as you say the word API, I get a little bit of like IT PTSD. Like those are things like I don't want to have to learn. Like mortgage loans are hard enough as they are, right? But I like having the flexibility for escrow tab because we can use our existing process, no changes. We use Encompass, we draw our document package. Right now, we are placing them on an internal drive for our officer to go print. And when we moved to IPEN, we're doing that same process. We're still dropping those documents on our H drive. It takes about 30 seconds to grab those documents, upload them to the website for escrow tab. And then I know that they're tagged, reviewed, the e-notes created if applicable, and those are over to the officer on their tablet. Our customers really like it as well. I know when we were first learning about e-closings, we were worried about adoption from the officer standpoint, adoption from the borrower, and it's really just about how you choose to phrase your sales message. So IPEN is our SOP 100% of the time now, whether it's 100% electronic or some sort of hybrid option, depending on the loan that we're doing and the investor that we're selling to, or maybe even how the property is titled. We start out just walking into the closing with the tablet. Of course, the customer can always decline to sign on the tablet, but we have not had that one time so far. And actually, customers are really think it's pretty cool, and think we're pretty cool, which is a nice bonus to the whole experience. And from a security perspective and a comfort perspective from the lender, I personally just really like that the signature is a real signature. So we added just a slightly modified CIP form to our closing packages. It's an e-CIP form, and that really went a long way with our compliance team. So we're still, having that notary notarize. This was actually our customer. Here's the signature on the CIP form. We can compare that to the signature on the rest of the documents. It's not that stamp signature, and that went a long way for us getting comfortable in a hurry. So I just wanted to add that.
Well, you have that opened, Danielle. Should we ask if anyone online would like to ask questions?
Actually, I think most people had to leave.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Anything was keeping touch in the chat, but
Any other questions in the room?
Questions? If not, sorry.
So does everyone have a tablet at the table, or are you just passing the tablet back and forth? Like, how do you make it so it's not?
Yeah, gonna comment on that. That was one thing I anticipated would be a challenge for us, or I thought would be.
Yeah.
Is, and I think our settlement attorneys, when I first broached them on this, thought it was going to be an issue, because they were like, nah, and so we're gonna have to.
Yeah.
We have one tablet, right? So we walk in. And with the tablet, you put it in front of them. You're passing, they are passing the tablet back. So if there's two borrowers or the two buyers, right? So they're it's passing, but it's still different than paper, right? You think about it.
Yeah.
It's no different.
Yeah.
It's just a tablet. You're just, pass it to the next person to sign it, pass it back. One of the things though was the settlement attorneys, the younger ones particularly, who didn't dream about these documents like I did. They were like, well, how do I know what if they ask a question, how do I know? Well, you can see, and if you can't see, just bring your laptop in. You can also pull up you can pull it right up there. You can follow along, answer the question. But anyway, so that, yeah. So it's all about mindset, because it's no different than the paper. You're passing back.
Yeah, and the notary being there as well. So typically the borrowers will go through, sign the whole packet, and then the notary can, one of the functionalities that we have is that you can click complete the packet, and then it pops up and says, oh, you missed a stamp on pages 9 and 11, whatever. You can go back to those pages, then the notary is able to fill in their information.
Right.
So they're notarizing after the borrowers have signed accurately, right? And then they apply that, and then they can close out the package. And once the package is closed, they can transfer it. It's automatically received back to the title agency, when they log into their profile of escrow tab, they can see the fully signed documents right there.
Yeah, and again, you know, the notary seal and stamp is the stylus. That's it, right? So no longer we have to log in all, you know, the stamp and the seal and everything that's gone. Done.
Or get a pencil.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, make it a box scale, we got a shade so you can scan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With escrow tab, who actually, like, prep the doc, who put it in?
So that's done, no, that's done by the software, so that's,
Okay, wow.
so that's the big piece for
Like
us.
that now?
It's done by the software, but
Oh, I didn't, okay. I
And
didn't,
it's kind of like, you know, where the team is gonna go.
yeah,
Like it's wrong, or I'm gonna give the call with page notarizing, they'll go through, you can track it, but. You get the credit on that and then you look at it.
yeah. So what's happening with ours is that we're, what I think it was actually a request that Allison had made, which is that it's highlighted, right? And then the borrower is signing with their I'm a lefty, so that's why it looks like them. But signing with their handwritten signature, and then that highlight disappears as soon as they're signing in that space. And you work through the whole document, but what happens when documents are dropped in escrow tab, if it's selected for doc prep, that runs through our OCR. We identify all the different signature and initial and whatever required fields you really want to be part of that document. And we run that all through our system, and then it's just set up for when the borrower.
And then just to highlight the form of this dictionary, was kind of getting around that, but. Usually I-10, it's not an email, could be an email, but it's not an email, so you're just getting lenders comfortable with I-10. It's not
For the note, in the note, think of it as almost e-note or wet note. And nothing in between. We wouldn't sign the PDF version of the note using escrow tab unless
Okay.
the bank is like,
so,
if they're holding it for portfolio, frankly, they don't need an e-vault, they don't need any of that stuff.
yeah,
If you're holding it for portfolio, you can accept whatever you want as a signature. And electronic signature has been legal for over 20 years in the United States. Some people will do that. Like when you get into a question about HELOCs, it's not a transferable record under the laws. So what is it? Well, it's an electronically signed document. And the only difference is if you think about an e-note, the way the laws are written is that you have a control system that is referred back to determine who's the controller of that transferable record. If it's just an electronically signed document, well, then you prove it up just like you would a wet document, right? So you have your credit agreement, you have the recorded document, the deed of trust, you have the evidence of who is mortgagee of that loan in the county recorder's office. And then you might have, depending on what you're doing with that loan, you might have some LPA or collateral agreement with the counterparty. Like if you're pledging it to a home bank or something like that. So you prove it up just like you would a wet signed document or wet signed loan.
E-HELOCs are coming. The new UCC Article 12 is recognizing, has a provision for, I forget what the terminology is.
To allow for
Electronic asset.
other documents to be considered a transfer.
Yeah.
So we wanted that, but there's a lot of banks trying to do,
Does the lender order the closing documents from their LOS or directly into escrow tab?
So they're ordering them from their LOS and they're shipping them off to title however they do today. Now, in some cases, like Allison can probably speak to this, but we can build an integration into their LOS so that they can just drop the documents directly from there. But, like for the amount that it costs a lender to have an LOS integration, sometimes it's not as worthwhile as you might.
yeah, all the ones we're doing, it's almost coming, just like it normally does. The documents being emailed to us, and we drop them in escrow tab, and then from escrow tab, we can manipulate and sort and package the documents however we want.
Right, and so Tom, when it comes to then choosing the notary, do you have in-house e-notaries that have been certified?
Yeah.
or use different-
Yeah, we got everybody, I think, on our staff, all our notaries are now.
Actually, very important.
Yeah, they're on the point, sorry. Yeah, we don't really, we rarely use mobile notaries anymore because, because we have this now, we can just send our, our attorney staff, all our closings are conducted by attorneys. And so we'll send them on the road with the tab.
I think that's, a lot of title companies that do use mobile notaries extensively, particularly, I think, outside of the, attorney states on the East Coast, but, even within, and those notaries will have a, first thing for them to do is to create their account with escrow tab, which is free to them. You don't charge them for any of that. And then it's about having a acceptable device. So we are in all three of the app stores. So there's multiple devices available that they could use. What we require is really a 13-inch device to make sure that the borrower is seeing the full sheet of paper, pixel for pixel, and signing it just like they would a piece of paper.
So you can have your own tablet, and they can also use a different tablet as long as it's.
Yeah, it no longer, it used to be that we would roll out only with the Microsoft Surface Pro, because that's what we had built our software for. But now there are, we're in the Android app store, so if they have an approved device and they've created their account with escrow tab, obviously notaries just can't go download the app and become have a stamp and all that stuff, but they need to make sure that, that device can be used, and we have like a list of devices that if they wanted to bring their own, they could.
And I believe, you guys are doing, a lot of work with like the National Notary Association and like notary companies and notary panels.
Yeah, so
to help facilitate.
we're fortunate that the NNA, when they saw what we had built, also endorsed us and have helped us in building out that network of signing agents that are creating their profiles within escrow tab. And then, if you're closing a loan, say you're a title company or lender and you have someone who's closing in Florida because they just bought their second property, there are notaries there who are escrow tab enabled and who can perform that closing. So in those situations, you're no longer waiting for any of those documents to get shipped back to you.
Quick question, so going back to like lender instructions, working with a lender that is okay with using escrow tab, do you need to do that per transaction and to get those okay, or is there like one bigger list of lenders that are okay with using escrow?
So I'd say it's like a hybrid of that. If they've never heard of escrow tab, they probably want to know beforehand. But some of the larger lenders have in their closing instructions what is eligible. Others, if we don't have a relationship with them, then we usually.
We just kind of push down a little bit too with this, like Brendan said, if there's something in their instructions, but we will reach out and just, I'll try to get a little compliance and say, look, here's how we want to do this transaction. Or here's how it works. And it is funny. I mean, there's some, most of us say, yeah, that's fine. As long as I still have my, note signed, have my weapon, need a trust signed wedding and so forth, it's fine. But there are some that still say they just, oh no, that's, we didn't do that. So, there's still some hesitancy, I guess.
Yeah, I just feel like getting back to the basics, you see the lender instructions in there, they're specific to blue ink,
I know, right? Right.
No wrong.
But I always argue, like I say, I'm talking with lender compliance, I say, well, it's gonna be wet ink, because the ink, if you want, it's coming out of the printer, if I can print it as wet.
It dries quick.
Yeah, right. But
So when they do get the document set back, the signature shows up in blue ink for reporting purposes. So there's not to pull one over on them or anything like that. We always say, have a conversation with the lenders. make sure that they're okay with this.
Yeah.
Or just tell us who it is, and we may have already had conversations with them and know the answer.
Right. And just curious, if you expand on that, is, you know, with this actual signature, you know, is it really?
Yeah, looks good. I tell you, well, let's just, in the beginning, I didn't have conversations because I thought, well, right, we still have to know your trust on the pen, not the IPEN. But the rest of the documents we had done through escrow tech, right? And then we sent them back the first couple too, without telling the lender we were using them. And we uploaded it to their system. And most of them nobody knows. It doesn't look, I mean, it's perfectly fine. It looks just like you would see, in a traditional closing. But we did have a couple lenders, but I think it was maybe the notary. But yeah, have a conversation. I think that's the key is to here's what we're doing, and then I just say culprit. If we put resistance.
Yeah. At US Bank, we built in templated, condition for our instructions that would go on our closing instructions based off of the type of closing it was gonna be. So that way, we were given an authorization for an a hybrid, ROM, whatever. Whoever was preparing those could just pop in, so they were standard across the board. So we did, from that perspective, we did run those, and legal and risk of compliance all approved the language ahead of time. So because a lot of the our national title partners that we worked with were required to I think you shared an example of that happened where the lender made you go back and stuff retime. Right. Title company didn't want to do that. I have to do that. So, they will, even though they wanted to do it, unless they had that on their instructions, they weren't gonna do it. Right.
We have, generally what we find, because we go to all the NBA conferences and all that stuff, it's rare that we find lenders who have said, well, we've never contemplated having closings, and we think that we would never go down that path, right? It's always, yes, it's on our roadmap. We know we want to get there, but we have a lot of work to do, or we think we have a lot of work to do. And then when we explain to them, well, what if I told you this? They're like, well, that sounds like it would be great, but then what else do I have to do? And it's like, well, that's it. Put in your closing instructions, what you want, right? And your closing instructions can offer more than one option. It can be either sign everything wet or sign everything this way. And if you can't do it one way, then do it the other, right? So those are that's why my colleague Amy, who I'm not sure if she's on, but she's on the board of the MMDBA, and she and I travel to a lot of these conferences to talk to lenders just about that, because we know Todd sees certain lenders on the documents 40% of the time. I wanted to add, Allison.
Sorry, you guys were muted for just a moment there, but I would say it's new, and anything that's new is always a little bit scary, but if there's any industry that can tackle new well, it's mortgage. Like, we know how to be creative. We're a tough group, and I think this is where we're going in the future, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see what happens in the next 5 or 6 years, especially. And if I should say when, but I'll say if rates start to come back down, we're really excited about the flexibilities that this is going to have for us and the efficiencies that we'll pick up so that we don't have pandemic 2.0, and that we can just be a little bit more modern and We can meet our borrowers at the coffee shop or, have lunch and sign documents and just make mortgage, more of an experience and more of a personal connection. It's such a big part of someone's life, and it's so easy for us to transactionalize it when we begin to really dive into the details. But at the end of the day, it's about the customer and about putting them in their home. And that this is the perfect product to allow a lot of flexibility to meet the customer where they're at.
Danielle, do we need to cut it off?
It's 10:30 now.
Oh, it is. Oh, wow. Okay, go ahead.
So we have someone that is interested in learning more, either we connect them with you or Amy?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
listen.
Yeah, I can give you my card
Yeah.
afterwards if you like and provide it to you. Just for 2 seconds, I don't know if everyone can see that, but this is what a page looks like when it's tagged. And then as I sign, that tag goes away and I can put my notary stamp where it needs to on that document, right? And then if I try to complete the document, I click verify and complete, but I didn't complete everything. So there's a couple pop-ups that can take me back to the page where I need to have additional documents. It's as easy as that.
Regarding that were besides talk, do you have a list of the title companies that use this action?
I can provide you.
Okay.
Well, thank you, sorry, as I just made my way to the front, but thanks everyone for coming out. Thank you, Brendan, for being here, and Amy for helping us put this all together too. It was great, very educational. And there's still coffee and breakfast sandwiches in the back. I'm so hungry, need extra food today.
Um,
Michelle Mason.